Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Ben talks about soybean cyst nematode and how it has evolved over time. Hear about our Starting Line Plus seed treatment using Saltro and Trunemco to combat this pest. Are you ready for 2023? We are. We are producing product and getting it shipped. Stay tuned for some field results. Lynn kicks off the 2023 sales season as the combines wrap up harvest. And Turk has an update on the markets.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars, Ben, Lynn, and Turk, and we'll start with Ben. He's got some information that's pretty interesting.
Yep, Iowa State had a article that came out at the beginning of this week, and it kind of talks about the history of soybean cyst nematode and what the relationship of the PI88788 gene is and when it was introduced. So to give a little bit of background behind it, PI88 is a gene, PI88788 is a gene that allows soybeans to become resistant to reproducing soybean cyst nematode on the roots of those plants. So when they first introduced it in the 90s, the late 90s, there were less than 10% of incidents where the female had the ability to reproduce on the roots of that plant. So when they first started, it was a success. But as Mother Nature typically works, our resistance to that pest has worked against us because we are using one mode of action, and essentially they have become resistant to that gene from where they're at. So if you look at the history of where we started to where we're at, there was a little bit over a 10% incidence of reproduction in 2002, probably closer to 12% 10 years later by 2012. And when we look at 2022, we are looking from anywhere from a 70 to a 90% reproduction instance to the soybeans that are currently out in the field that have PI88788. So every year, Merschman Seeds enters all of our varieties, or as much as they have room for testing, into Iowa State's trials, because certain PI88788 genes work in certain soybean lines work better than others. So that data is always available. You can go back. All of our varieties are going to be tested again this year. But what it makes you think about is that this is the time of year that we need to be testing for soybean cyst resistance. One of those ways that can be done is through a pattern ag application, which some of our dealers are set up for, or you can go out and individually test and send your results to either University of Illinois or Iowa State University or any of your land grants.
Or if you're doing a fertility test, just send a sample in for SCN.
Correct.
Fall's the best time.
Yep. So, that kind of leads into, okay, we know that we have high levels of resistance to the PI88788. What are our options once we know what our levels are out in the field? What are some of our options to combat that? And one option to stick with a gene is to try to select soybeans that are Peking resistant. And that is something that the MS Tech breeding program is working very hard on. The number of Peking beans that we get to evaluate every year the number of those lines are increasing. There's kind of a unfortunate common relative maturity zone where they're having a lot of success, and maybe you kind of want to talk about why we don't see more Peking lines in our lineup now.
Well, we have one, Osage, and it's a good one. And one of the problems when working with these genes is that they bring along yield drag. Now, if you have high levels of cyst in your field, it's not yield drag. It's actually going to bring your yield up. But the problem that we have is decoupling that yield drag, and it takes many generations of breeding to do it. And we're just starting to do it on Peking. And it took a while on PI88788 too, because I remember the first ones that came out, they were always at the bottom of the test. If there was no cyst present, if there were high levels of cyst, they were at the top of the test. So it's that kind of scenario that you have going on. So, try to uncouple the yield drag and get high yielding lines with Peking resistance, and we are screening very hard on that to get the additional new source of resistance into our mainstream germplasm.
Yep. So we also see Peking resistance quite a bit in our late group 4 maturities, and just from what I see from the number standpoint, it's kind of like a 2.6 to a 2.0. There's quite a few options that are hovering right in that 98, 99 percentile of, and we usually like to have products in like the 103, 104% win ratios when we look at our yield data. So as those numbers continue to come up, we will be making selections and bringing those in. And then I think we're going to close the gap for that late group 4, mid to late group 2, and then we'll eventually start seeing stuff come into the group 3s.
Yeah, and so farmers understand that cyst nematode takes away a lot of yield. It's just you don't see it. In other words, it's kind of a stunting effect to the plant. In extreme cases, it will turn the leaves yellow in your dry areas. And typically, the lighter your soil, the less moisture holding capacity that you have for moisture, the more problems you have with cyst. The quicker it will show up. It's masked a lot on these heavy soils, but it's just slowly, I call it like a vampire, just sucking the energy out of that plant and not letting it perform to its maximum level.
Yep. So one of the other ways that we can go about treating for soybean cyst nematode is a seed treatment option for defense against that pest. And we already had one in our bonus coat seed treatment that we had last year, and that would be Saltro. Saltro has some efficacy on soybean cyst nematode. It's on the label for that product. We added to that with our Starting Line Plus that we've already talked about a couple times, but that Trunemco product is a dual mode of action that has both cis-jasmonic acid, which does something to the inside of the plant that makes it really hard for the cyst on the soybean root to form, and then it also has a biological factor as well that feeds on the egg sacs and the chitin in the head of the stylet, where the infection point from that soybean cyst tries to infect the root. So we got 3 modes of action in our Starting Line Plus, which is our full boat seed treatment, to really work against these in the areas where SCN is really an issue.
Yeah, definitely if you're on sand, definitely on lighter soils, it's going to add yield. And I'm really impressed with this product because of the fact we do have multiple modes of action. And I think, Ben, everything that you've done with the seed treatment this year is to have multiple modes of action, not rely just on one fungicide. We have multiple fungicides. We have multiple ways to attack the diseases that we have. And I think that's one of the things that's going to really lift our yields next year.
Yep, and some of the fields like that I would be screening for, like you alluded to, are the sandier soils, the bean-on-bean situations, to get those numbers to know really where your risk is at. Every year that you rotate away from a soybean field, the rule of thumb has always been you can kind of cut those numbers in half. So if you go from soybean to corn, you lower that number by half every time. But the bean-on-bean is really where we see issues, where those populations don't get knocked back and you could start to see yield issues.
Well, it's good advice, no question about it. Yep. Lynn, do you have anything?
We're entering that time of the sales season where we get really excited from a salesman standpoint. Guys are getting done, combines are going back in the shed, they've evaluated the hybrids. So right now is a great time to be visiting with your seed dealer and getting your variety placements all taken care of. We're to a point where we're sitting in a really good spot with supply. Yields came back on seed production really good. The germs that we're getting back look excellent. So the early bird gets the worm on that end. So if you're excited about the Merschman products and like what you see, get with your dealer and get that process going. We're definitely think we're going to have a really big year this year. If any indications of early sales continue on throughout, it's going to be an awesome year. So, like I said, you've been in the combine. Maybe if you have to go back, pull the data off the yield monitor. But I know we've kind of talked about it. You kind of go through the field and you notice some things that stick in the back of your mind. If you haven't jotted it down, jot it down and go visit your dealer and let's get the product on the books and get ready for next year.
Yeah, we're shipping product right now to our dealers. Our production is staying up with orders right now, so we're ready. And I know, again, farmers plant as early as April 1st on soybeans, so give us a little bit of time to get that product produced and shipped. And just remember, the only reason you wait to order your soybeans is because you want to pay more. Honest to God. So just The earlier you order, you save, and the farmers who plan make the most money.
And the highest quality is always the first seed produced.
It is. It's the seed that basically goes right off the combine, right into the bag, virtually no handling, and a lot of bonus germination. And that generally can equate to a little bit more yield and better stands.
The longer it sits in the bin, the more fungal activity reduces germ in that bin.
That's correct. That's a good point, Turk. Turk, what do you have for us today?
Well, I just wanted to talk just a little bit about the markets. Again, we're starting to enter into a period of higher volatility in the markets. I mean, this week showed us how fast it can go up and how fast it can go down, and kind of ending the week up right in where we started almost. But the volatility in Russia and with Russia and Ukraine over there in the Black Sea has really got the markets shook up. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But what I wanted to talk about just a little bit is that a lot of people are applying fertilizer right now, doing a lot of things, buying inputs. And I don't think that it's out of line to, if you're buying, $50,000 worth of inputs to sell $50,000 worth of corn or soybeans for the next year. I mean, I think you got to protect yourself. Then that's not a wrong decision if you could, because you're profitable.
Right.
And it's not a wrong decision to lock in that profit. So I don't think you should get crazy, but I think you should protect yourself. And hopefully at the end of the year, you've got some extra bushels to sell.
Yeah, there's the wheat planting out in Kansas is very dry. I mean, there's a lot of, you could build a case negatively and positive for these markets, and that's why we're seeing the volatility.
This La Nina is kind of hanging in there again. It's yet to be determined whether it's going to continue another year or we're going to flip and go to an El Nino type situation. But we'll know that again in time. But if La Nina continues, we probably see some higher prices, and if it flips and goes to El Nino, we'll probably see some lower prices. So it's too early to tell.
Well, I wish we had that crystal ball that could tell us exactly what to do. It'd make our jobs a lot easier, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. But the good news, we have some rain coming in this weekend that will help the Mississippi River levels, so hopefully. So it'll help get exports back up to where they belong.
The river's open. It's just that they have to not load the barges quite as heavy and to get through. And then when they have a pinch point, they're dredging it. But I understand things are moving, but at a slower pace than what we'd like to see.
I heard that the river levels are actually 3 foot higher than they were at the low level.
Yep.
Down in the pinch area. So that helps.
Yep, that all helps.
Our local basis, you and I were talking, was that this week, that Tuesday, like overnight basis on soybeans
Jumped by 30-40 cents.
Mm-hmm. So locally, there's some opportunities to price right now and have a very attractive 14.24. Was that
14.25 is what I think you could get at the local elevator cash price.
Well, it takes every dollar with what it costs to operate today. So,
and you could lock in $14 for next October.
Yep.
That's not a bad place to start.
Nope.
Well, brings me to the corny jokes. And I first of all, I want to confess to you, I hired a fitness trainer. Thought I should get in shape, a little bit. What are you laughing about?
It's not working.
I haven't got to it yet. Well, the fitness trainer asked me, "What kind of a squat are you accustomed to doing?" And I said, "Diddly." That's where
That's the problem.
That's exactly right. So this one here is about a hospital. If anybody's ever been in a hospital, this is a student nurse story. Okay. Hospital regulations require a wheelchair for patients being discharged. I think you've all seen that. However, while working as a student nurse, I found one elderly gentleman already dressed, sitting on the bed with a suitcase at his feet, who insisted he didn't need any help to leave the hospital. After chat about the rules, being the rules, he reluctantly let me wheel him to the elevator. On the way down, I asked him if his wife was meeting him. He said, I don't know. She's still upstairs in the bathroom changing out of the hospital gown. It's kind of like life. Once in a while we get a little bit ahead of ourselves, right? Yep. Well, thanks for watching this week. We sincerely appreciate your business. We hope that your harvest is wrapping up or completely done and that you had some good yields, and we'll see you next week. Take care.